Oh yeah. What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Project Grow Show. I'm your host, Adrian Boysel, and I have my one and only co-host, Mr. Chris McKenzie. What's up, brother?
Hey, how are you, Adrian?
Doing great, doing great. Thanks for being here with me today for another episode. I'm excited about this one. We got an entrepreneur like ourselves that's a visionary that has a lot of things going on, and I'm just excited to be back here for another one.
Yeah.
Awesome. So without further ado, let's just go ahead and roll into it, and we'll introduce our guest. His name is Gresham Harkless, and he is a very, very talented guy, very creative, actually owns a digital marketing agency like myself, like Chris, and has a number of other things going on, CEO of Blog Nation, CB Nation, just a number of great projects that he's been working on. But what really stood out to me is just the level of momentum and just passion that he has for what he's doing. He's got a great YouTube channel. I've seen some of his videos. Some of his videos have 25,000 views on them, which is great. So just a really talented guy. He's making a lot of momentum, and he's actually on the other side of the country. So without further ado, let's just go ahead and roll into it. What's up, Gresham?
How's everyone doing? I appreciate you having me on.
You too. So it's great to have you here today. We're just going to talk a little bit about business, entrepreneurship, but most importantly, I felt like today's conversation, because you have claimed yourself as the CEO Blog Nation guy, I want to ask people, what is your opinion of being a CEO? Because I think, the idea of being a CEO is very attractive to people. You're the top, you're the leader, you're the boss, you're all these things, but what does it really mean to you to be a CEO?
Nice. I absolutely love this question. I asked this question on my show, so this definitely hits home for me because I've heard so many different perspectives. And a lot of times I say, as you guys can kind of speak to, I think there's been a lot of disruption, obviously, in the world and how people look at business and entrepreneurship. And for me, like being a CEO is just all about that leadership. It's not necessarily a size of the company. It's not necessarily a stage of the company. It's all about kind of leadership and understanding and making that impact true to like who you are. And I think so many times, you open up Webster's dictionary or you talk to a few people, you hear this is exactly what it is or this is what it isn't. And you can go back and forth. But to me, it always meant leadership. It always meant, being able to have an impact. And I think a lot of times when you talk about entrepreneurs and business owners, they typically, because it's so hard, because it's not it's not what it looks like on Instagram and social media channels. It's definitely difficult. It's definitely having ups and downs that you really should be passionate about it. So many times because of that, there's usually a really strong passion for people that start businesses, start ventures because of the challenge, because of the ups and downs and what it takes. So that's what I've always felt like, being a CEO is about being a leader for the passions and things that you understand will impact and make the world a better place.
Hey, Gresh, it really stood out. I really liked that answer. I would love to maybe see if I could pick your brain on what stands out the most when you say ups and downs. Can you think of one up and one down that kind of stand out the most over the course of your role as CEO?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're all in the agency business, and I think that a lot of times you have those clients that are really great, and sometimes they're not so great. Sometimes you have clients that you keep for 5-6 years. You have those clients that you keep for 30 minutes, and I think that is kind of like the ups and downs of business. And I think so many times, especially when I was about 25, 26 when I started my business. I think one of the biggest challenges that young entrepreneurs have is you have to, a lot of times when you start a business later on, usually you have, your house in order a lot more. When you're a young entrepreneur, a lot of times you're getting those things in order while you're also trying to get your business in order. So a lot of those challenges you have where, you're trying to figure out how best to run the business, what things to do, what are your ideal clients. There's so many kind of ups and downs related to that. And I think that for me, that's probably been one of the biggest things is that, you want to pay attention to what works and what people are doing to be successful. But at the same time, being a creative, as I know you guys are, you also want to do and create your own lane as well. And the challenge between doing that and making sure that you're going to be successful, you can pay the bills and do those things. It's always a balancing act, and it's not easy. but it's something that I feel like I'm super excited about it every day, even in the worst of times.
Awesome. I've been the CEO thing. What's exciting about this episode for me is the CEO thing has come up a lot lately. And as I reflect over the last 14 years of doing this for a living, in the very beginning, I was the CEO. And then as time has gone on, I started to try to change my title as to more of like creative director and, owner. And I've had different titles over the years. Marketing consultant, chief dream officer, all the different titles that people can give themselves. And so I think the word CEO, even though it's an acronym, I think can be taken out of context a lot of the time. And so what I want to do on this episode that I think is really important is giving people that are very new in entrepreneurship, because this is a mentorship show, what is the difference between somebody that's a CEO and somebody that's a business owner?
Absolutely. I mean, I think it's definitely a mindset thing. I think as you kind of spoke to, a lot of times when you're CEO, even if you're not the CEO in that time, I think a lot of it has to do with vision, with seeing how the company is going to grow, with understanding sometimes you have to take on different roles for a certain period of time as the company grows. I think so many times with the traditional business owner, I think sometimes people start business to kind of create that role that they'll be in until kind of the end of time, where I think a CEO has a vision. Maybe they have multiple ventures that they want to start or multiple things that they want to do. So they know that even though they might be the business owner for that time, maybe it's more for a year or two, whereas they understand that they're going to bring on somebody to take care of, the managing the meetings or the sales or whatever that might be, so that they can remove themselves from that position and go on to the next thing and do those other things. So I think when you have that kind of mentality or that perspective on growing the business, it changes a lot, from a business owner standpoint. And I think so many times we kind of get caught in where a business is, not necessarily where a business is going, where the vision of the leader has over the business. And even if it's a solopreneur that's just getting started, it doesn't necessarily mean that that's what they will want in 2 or 3 years. It doesn't necessarily mean that is even how they consider or define what being a CEO is. So I think once you have that vision can definitely be personal to you. And, I don't believe from a title standpoint, you definitely have to answer to anybody related to that.
Right. Yeah, and I think so too. I think my perspective has started to shift a little bit as I continue to learn, get mentored by other people, meet other CEOs that are way above my level of where I'm even at today. And so as I've done that, I've started to research and see these different people and the roles that they take and how they run their business with multi-million-dollar corporations. Because the clients that we have today versus the clients that we had even 2 years ago are totally different level. I mean, we dealt with clients that were, 500,000 up to $1 million, maybe even $1.5 million, $2 million. But now we're dealing with companies that are 5 million to 25 million. And those CEOs that are running those businesses are on a whole different level than the CEOs that are running a local plumbing company or that are doing, HVAC. So I've been seeing a difference. And so I'm starting to try to apply some of that mentality and some of those principles of looking at a CEO role differently. And what I mean by that is a CEO should be overseeing the business, like you said, right? And being the visionary of the business and being able to have a high elevation look over all the different pillars of the business. So you got your finances, you got your sales and marketing, you got your sales and marketing really are two separate ones. And then you got your operations, right? So those are the main areas. And there's some other ones you can get into human resources and other stuff like that. But those are the main ones. And you're kind of looking over the business. And as the CEO, your time and you should be able to build the processes and have those things into place. But at a certain point, when I feel like you kind of earn that CEO, because that's what I feel like a lot of people have given themselves that title, but they haven't really earned that title. They're actually a business owner. They can put owner on their business card, but they really haven't earned that CEO title yet. And it's not that they don't deserve it or they're not smart enough for it or they're not good enough for it. But I feel like a CEO title should have something that you kind of got to shoot for the CEO title, right? You should be able to step away from your business, just like I did about a week and a half ago during a family emergency. You should be able to step away for 2 to 3 days and know that your team is still running, and that business and that culture and all those aspects of your business are still going. If you can't step away from that business during a family emergency and everything stops, you're not the CEO. You are the owner. You are the business. You are the daily operations. Without that business, it can't function. So I feel like when you get to the point where you can walk away from the business, doesn't have to be for a long period of time, whether it's a day, 3 days, or 5 days, or 2 weeks. If you can walk away from the business and you know things are not only going to still run, but continue to grow while you're gone, I think you've earned that CEO position. Just my thoughts. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely agree. It's funny when you were saying that. I mean, I think the book that comes to mind is the E-Myth, and I think so many times when people think about starting a business, they really end up creating their job, and because you're passionate about something, and there's a difference between growing the business, scaling the business, creating those systems, putting those things in place where you can walk away from the business. It's extremely important. I think there's a place where everybody has the opportunity to create the business that they want. I think there's not a one size fits all as far as like, oh, I need to grow my business the way that this person grows their business. But I do think that there's a place where many people don't understand like the systems, the things that you want to have in place to be able to scale a business, and to have the freedom to be able to kind of truly like walk away and get away from your business without it, going kaput and continue to grow and scale. And I think that once you understand that and you're honest about that, then I think it allows you that opportunity to kind of either correct it or keep it as going, but you get to make that decision for yourself.
Yeah. So Gresh, when you talk about the passions and things like that, what is it that drives you? Where is your passion? And because you're so diversified in all of the things that you're doing, which I'm sure you'll get to explain, where you're at with the different things that you're doing. But I'd love to see what is your real passion? What drives you? What is your driving force?
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny when you were introducing me, I was like, I'm glad you say those nice words. I was just like, it kind of sounds like I'm just a busybody. And I definitely am. I have loads of different interests and different passions. But when I was kind of figuring out what I wanted to be when I grew up, finding out like who I was, not what I should be from external forces or people around me. I kind of went back to when I was 10 years old. I started a family newspaper, and that family newspaper I started because my dad went TDY. He was in a completely different country. This was pre-Zoom, Skype, FaceTime, all those things that you can kind of have that instant connection across the country or across the world. So for me, I started a family newspaper, and we sent it to my dad to let him know about everything that was going on in the family. But I also, in true entrepreneurial form, I guess, kind of sold the subscriptions to my family members. And the reason that I bring that up is because I did a lot of things. I sold the potato chips. I did, went to MJ Designs and got beads and sold those, did all those things that I felt like were truly entrepreneurial. But I felt like that story to me was something that was unique. And I still don't really know how exactly that idea came about. So when you were asking, what's my passion as somebody who has a lot of interest, that common thread kind of came through for me where, I love content. I love creating content. It's evolved a lot more. I love writing. And I love kind of getting that opportunity to kind of put the proverbial pen to pad and create things. I think that's my gift. I think that's the thing that kind of separates me. So while it might manifest itself in different industries in different ways, at the heart of it, I truly just like to create those connections, tell those stories, get to really know why a person does what they do, what makes them tick. And at the heart of it, I have and work and have had a lot of different positions and a lot of different things, but I think that's the common thread that I think that separates me more than anything else.
That's neat. Super cool. Yeah, I think that's really unique and special because like every CEO or business owner, especially in the digital marketing space, they all have their unique angle, right? My thing is I'm highly creative. I can bust out a piece of paper and I can draw you $1 million logo, right? Literally $1 million brand. I could draw that in 30, 45 minutes or create you an awesome flyer for your event or like those types of things come easy to me. It's almost effortless where you have a very creative gift, but it's for writing and for creating content, which I find a lot in our industry, which a lot of people struggle with. So we all have these specific areas of talents and gifts. And I'm curious, how do you use that gift aside from your day-to-day business? Like, how are you using that gift to grow what you're doing on the agency side?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that as we kind of talked about the whole kind of CEO mindset and understanding what is what, I think when you have an agency business, and as I've grown the agency business, you can easily fall into the trap of where you're doing all of the things. And when you're doing all of the things, it doesn't allow you that opportunity to grow and expand. And so definitely to answer your question, that's really what I've looked at and started to leverage, CEO Blog Nation, all of this content that I'm building to, rather than be a purely kind of service-based business, it's more of a product that has the opportunity to scale more, because no matter how many clients I want to serve and I want to work with, and I want to help, at the end of the day, I'm limited as far as like the resources and the time and those things. So for me, I really looked at CB Nation and creating the blogs, the videos, the podcast as a way to really scale the business, because I can reach so many more people by using and leveraging these tools versus, using or providing that kind of service-based business. And I think understanding the balance between that, understanding that getting quality clients and be able to kind of serve them and help them out is important, but understanding that for those maybe smaller businesses or businesses that aren't the right fit, maybe there's a time and place where you can kind of replicate yourself in like blog content or video content so that you can help them out, but help them out in a different way. That's been kind of like the shift and the change that, still working on and still creating, but I think it's something that allows you to really make a bigger impact.
So you see these people like Gary Vee and these other major players in marketing that are, saying you need 100 pieces of content a day. Do you shoot for a number, because you're talking about a lot of different arenas with content? So how do you approach that? What's too much, what's not enough?
Yeah, I mean, I think you always want to have, I'm a content guy, so if you ask me, I want to say as much content as possible. But I think so many times you kind of forget. There's, Gary Vee even talks about replicating content. So you have a video, you make it into a blog post, you take that blog post you created into a smaller Instagram story, and you continue to kind of do that. So that allows you to work smart, not hard. But I do think that as people create more and more content, it's kind of I don't want to say competitive, because that makes it seem like if you're staying true to yourself, you're not really competing. I've always felt like that. But at the same time, when you're talking about showing up and ranking and doing those things from a more tactical standpoint, you will have to probably create more content and do it in a unique and engaging way. So it just kind of depends on, what your goal is, what you're trying to accomplish. I think everything goes back there. But I think that people fall into the trap where they see Gary Vee create a tremendous amount of content and they say, oh, I have to do that to be successful, without really understanding what success means to them, what they want to create, and who they're trying to target. And I think that's the trap that so many people fall into, is rather than, running your own race, you end up running somebody else's race.
Wow.
That's very, very smart. Yeah. And I think, if I were to be able to switch, being as good of a content writer as you are, because I looked at your CEO Blog Nation, and your content is fantastic. That's been an area that in the last year that I've been working on the most. And as a creative person, I try to take my creativity as an artist and now wrap that into the way that I'm writing. But it's not easy. It's something that has taken me a long time to just get comfortable with and enjoying doing, because I still am not even, I would say 100% I don't enjoy it as much as I do. If you give me a pen and a paper and ask me to draw something, I'll have fun and I get excited about it. But when you tell me to write, a blog article that's 2,000 words, I'm like, if it's on a topic that I love, I'll probably knock it out, but I'm not going to be like super pumped up about it, right? So that's what's beautiful about what you do, is I've been able to transition or use, I could say, my logo design and my branding gifts for my business and for my clients. But now I've transitioned to doing it mostly just for my own company. And I have my team doing all the fulfillment work for the clients, and I can kind of overview it and say, hey, adjust this, adjust that. But with you and doing the content writing, is that kind of like the same thing for you? Are you going in and taking clients' website content and things like that and putting your own spin on it, rewriting it, or are you just solely now working on your own content to drive in business for your agency and for the other things that you're doing?
Yeah, it's kind of similar to what you're doing as well too. You kind of oversee and make sure that that's being done. And I think the thing that I've tried to do with CB Nation is have it be more of a brand than a more about me, about the content that I'm creating. And what I mean by that is I have guest posts, I do interview based podcasts. So I think so many times when we're trying to create content, we're thinking, oh man, I have to write, the 2,000 words. Oh man, how am I going to make that happen? When in reality, there's somebody that probably would love to write the 2,000 words and wants to hop on your platform in order to do that. So it's also kind of creating, rather than, hosting the party, creating, everything you see, ordering the food, baking the food, whatever you got to do, doing all of the things, you pretty much just have the party, you have the venue, you try to invite people to it that are really good at what they do. And that's kind of like the mentality that I've tried to take and how I've kind of look at it. But definitely that's where the scalability happens, is when you start to be able to focus on building your own platforms and be able to scale that out. And that's definitely something that's the level that I'm working on now.
So can you give some practical advice, some practical tips on how you scale? Practical from the sense that you do get too much work. How do you expand your team? How do you grow your team by finding more people at the drop of a dime?
It's difficult. I have issues finding quality people all the time. And I think that's one of the biggest things that a lot of agency owners and entrepreneurs and business owners kind of struggle with. I think one of the things that I say this a couple of times, but I'll go back to it, is I have to catch myself to make sure that I know what success is for me, because you can get very quickly into trying to grow the service-based part of the business when in reality, that's not how I deem success. So one of the things that I'll even ask myself is like, am I completely filled with all clients that I would consider to be an A client? And if that's not the case, then that in and of itself needs to be fixed. And if that's not the case, then that's something I got to work on. So I think it's making sure those things are in place so that if I decide to scale, I'm able to do that, but it's not necessarily something that I want to do right now. As far as being able to kind of create the content, I think you get to work a lot more efficiently if you're working on from a product standpoint, or if you have an either productize your service-based business, but really create a product in and of itself, which is what I try to do with the blog and the podcast, so that you're able to make more impact and you're able to kind of create a piece of content and reach 20, 30,000 people. And maybe they, click on an affiliate link or something along those lines, where you're not making what you might make from one client, but you're working more efficiently and you're having a bigger impact, and maybe having that recurring revenue come in.
Wow.
Yeah, I think that's huge. I really, really do. And as you were talking, it came to my mind. I was like, holy moly. Like, if you think about it, the power of content, like the visual design stuff is great because it can draw people in, especially if you have a nice design, and it can establish authority and do a lot of those things. But when it comes to content writing, there's so much power behind that, because you have keywords and you have, like you said, press releases and blog, guest blogs and all these different things that you can do that drive traffic. Graphic design and the visual design stuff doesn't drive traffic. And so that's what I think is amazing and exciting and even inspiring about what you're doing, is your skill set specifically is something that is huge to drive traffic. So I love that. I love that you have that ability. What I wanted to do is, because you have such a wide experience in the content writing with your CEO Blog Nation, CB Nation, and all that, give the people some tips, maybe 3 tips that you can give them when it comes to creating their content or writing content, that things that you look for if you're going to go find somebody. What is it that they should be looking out for, whether it's, for lead generation or for, SEO, whatever that is, or just straight readability, engagement. Like, what are some 3 tips that you can give some people that can help people with their content?
Yeah, absolutely. And related to like all aspects of marketing, I usually say that before you jump in and kind of create a post, you really want to look at 3 different questions that you answer. So that's the first thing, is just answer those 3 questions. And those questions are all about your target market. You really want to paint a picture of who exactly you're trying to target and what exactly success looks like. And the reason that I bring that up is because you might create a podcast, or you might create a 2,000 or 4,000 word blog post, but that's only if it's relevant to your target market. Generally speaking, the more content, the better, but really understanding who you're trying to reach, who you're trying to connect with, who you want to come in the door is one of the best questions that you can answer. The next question I usually say is you really want to get clear about what success is. What are your goals? What are your aspirations? Are you trying to hop on more podcasts? Do you want to be on awesome podcasts like this? Do you want to maybe promote your book? Are you trying to get people to click and buy affiliate links? What does success look like specifically for you, and how exactly are you going to define that? And then the third question is being honest about the resources that you have. I think so many times understanding that, hey, if I'm going to do it myself, if you don't like creating content, if you don't like blogging, but you can talk, why not just transcribe your talks so that you have that as blog content? Don't force yourself to try to do those things that you're not going to do, because it's going to fall by the wayside. It's not going to be consistent. So understanding that, or if you have the budget in order to do that, maybe you're going to bring on an agency to do those things. But I think getting really clear on those first three questions are very, very important for everything I say related to marketing. But generally speaking, about blog content, I think one of the biggest things that most people don't do is have a call to action, at least at the bottom, but even within the content. So if you know that you're creating this piece of blog content so that you can get more speaking opportunities, why not have at the bottom, was this of interest to you? Did you like reading this message? Why not give me a phone call? Why not click this message and join my email list? Just something along those lines, so that you start to gradually build that list and build that reputation. And that could be anything on how you're going to figure out your strategy in order to do that. And then from an SEO standpoint, I would really say if you're not familiar with something called, there's a title tag and meta description. Have those things set up. Understand that the pages and the sites that perform the best have thousands and thousands of posts and blog content. So understand that when you're figuring out who you're trying to target, understand those keywords, figure out what their title tag, what your meta description is going to be, work backwards from those keywords, and then figure out the content from there, and make sure that if you're not familiar with it, you're translating your website for Google to understand exactly what's to follow on that site. So make sure you're doing that. You're doing that within the specifications for your title tag and meta description as far as the characters, and make sure you have those things in place.
Oh man, so many gold nuggets. Yeah, and I think you have so much knowledge. You're like us, like you could just boom, 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 like a machine gun of gold nuggets, right? And I'm like, oh, and I'm hearing them all because these are areas that I'm working on every day, especially because I'm in the middle of writing a book, and so like I want to go back just a little bit and not have you repeat it, but I want to just point out a couple of the things you said. You said starting at the end and working backwards. That is something that I do a lot of. And it's helped me so many times. If I'm trying to reach a goal, let's just say I want to make $100,000 a month as an agency. Okay, well, start at the end and work backwards. How many clients do I need? What's my average client? How long do they stay with me? And having all of that data helps me put together a picture on at least the number side of how many clients I need to get. So if each one of my clients is worth $5,000 a piece and I want to make $100,000 a month, okay, I need X amount of clients. If they're going to stay with me, if my churn rate is at a certain level, then I know I'm going to need to replace a couple of those every 3, 6, 9, 12 months, whatever. So being able to work backwards to be able to come up with a number, okay, I need 15 clients a month every single month for the next 12 months, and I'll have broken through my $100,000 goal. And I think what you said there is the same thing on the content writing is, what is the end goal? And to me, you said the objective in the beginning, right? What's the objective? What's the purpose? Who's the audience that you're speaking to? If you know who your audience is, then you're going to be able to identify what their problems are. And that is starting at the end and working backwards. It's once you understand what the problem is that you're solving, then you can work yourself backwards and figure out the solution, right? And draw them in with, hey, are you feeling this? Are you feeling that? That's what's going to get their attention. Because I think, even myself included, a lot of us start to create or write, specifically write. And when we start writing something, all of a sudden we write like 1,500 words. We're like, woo, we get all stoked. And then we go out and we publish it and we put it on our blog. We share it to our Facebook page. We share it to a couple places. And then we just sit and we wait. And it's like people that build a website, right? If you build it, you just hope that they'll come. and then, you get 1 view or 2 views, and then a week later you like check it again, or maybe if 13 minutes later you check it again, and then you check it 10 times the first day and you're like, man, I got 4 views. What's going on? I thought this thing was going to be like, it's such a great blog article. You have to be able to write with the pain in mind, and then be able to also draw traffic to that. Because if you don't know SEO, it's going to be really hard to structure that with the right titles and the descriptions and the meta descriptions and the H1s and the different keywords in there. It's going to be hard. So I think a lot of people have this misconception that you just write an article, you put it out on the web, and next thing you know, you're going to have a bunch of traffic. That's not how it works, right?
Yeah, definitely not at all. It's funny. I have a blog post that I posted saying, if you build it, they won't come. If you market it well, they might. So that's kind of like the idea, is understanding that, you put something up, you put something out there, then you really shouldn't do that. But yeah, it's a big thing. And I often, even in marketing, even though it's more of a business principle, I'll talk about the lean startup, because that book kind of talks about basically creating something that is not perfect, and then kind of iterating from there, continue to kind of scale and grow that from there. Because I think so many times, especially as creatives, I think sometimes the easiest thing you can do is to create whatever it is that you want to create. The hardest thing to do is really to take that feedback and pivot and understand exactly what that is. And I think so many times people jump in and want to create it, or they come up with a great business idea, when in reality they need to just kind of get it started and get that market feedback and go from there.
Yeah, one of my mentors calls that imperfect action. Just take action, even if it sucks. Take action, because let's just say you're building lead generation websites. Well, the first one's probably going to suck. The second one's probably going to suck. The third one's going to suck a little less. The fourth one's going to suck a little less. And by the time you get to your 50th lead gen site, they're probably going to start to look pretty good. But if you don't start first and start taking imperfect action, you're never going to get to number 50. And that's what a lot of people struggle with, is they don't reach those numbers because they're not consistent, and they get discouraged and they just give up after the first one. So I think quality is important, but I think quantity is just as important.
Arnold Schwarzenegger said the same thing about working out. He said, just do it. Even if you don't have the right form, just do it. It's about, showing up. That's the hardest part for most people. Just doing it. So producing all that content, but actually having those strategies also is great to do. Do you, in your experience, do you utilize automation through like blog to social, some of these kind of plugins that will send it out to multiple different social networks, Zoho or anything like that, to stagger your content? Can you talk about that as far as the importance? Do you use it?
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, a lot of those that I use Hootsuite, but I'm testing out a few other things.
Yeah.
What you can basically use is take that RSS feed and allow you to kind of plan out that content. I'm actually working with another one, and I can't remember the name of it, and I can find out what it is. But basically, it does do that staggering via social media, and it keeps that evergreen content, because it's so noisy on social media sites, you can't really often, when you make that blog post and you post it out, you get that 1 view, and most people get discouraged, when in reality it might be a really killer piece of content, but you might have to share it more than once for it to see that payback. And yeah, so I'll definitely use automation tools for even the podcast. We'll use tools to make audiograms and things like that. And a lot of that allows you to, again, kind of focus on what is your zone of genius. As we kind of talked about in the very beginning about being a CEO, it's not necessarily doing all of those things, but it's understanding, being aware, and knowing what it takes to set all those things up, but really kind of put those things in place.
Real quickly, can you touch on that audiogram? I've heard about it, but I'm not familiar with it. So maybe you could just teach me real quick. It's something that I've heard, and I haven't researched it. So maybe you just give me a cheat sheet.
Yeah, absolutely. So whenever you take like a piece of content, you can kind of create, and I had a guy that was on my show, that was supposed to be on my show, and he said, I want to be on the show so I can get those little squiggly lines that happen below when you speak. And that's kind of like what an audiogram is that you can actually see the person as they're speaking. It has the ups and downs, and there's like automated tools that allow you to kind of create those. And again, with that RSS feed, you can set it up through the platform, and it actually creates those audiograms for you. So you can just pull them out and share them via social media.
That's neat. Cool.
Yeah, I'm curious because one of the things I've been getting into is I've been trying to write content every single week, at least twice a week, and good content that's for my book specifically. And I've thought to myself, should I be posting this stuff directly to my website first, or should I post this content and write it directly into Medium or an app like Medium, and then if it hits and if it does well, then add it to my blog? Or is that going to be a duplicate content kind of thing?
Yeah, that's a good approach at market research. I never thought about that. Is that something people actually do?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that's a great way to kind of get. I'm a big proponent of blogging or creating it on your site first and then repurposing it there, only because of that duplicate content that you mentioned. And I'd rather get as much of the kind of good will from Google that you can. So I think I'm really big in terms of trying to post it there and kind of repurposing it from there. But I think you're absolutely right where maybe it's not the same piece of content. Maybe it's that imperfect action, that imperfect blog post that you create and add it there. And then when it gets a little bit more polished, maybe you have it, or you get that market feedback, I should say, you get that opportunity to really publish it with that, information and as a longer form blog post on your website.
Yeah, I think that's really helpful because that's a cloudy area for me. And it's, putting as much time and effort as I am into writing, I'm like, man, I don't know where I should be starting. I mean, I want to write blogs on my website, but my traffic isn't insane. I mean, I have specific targeted keywords that we go after and we generate a decent amount of traffic, but I know that is one of the keys to creating more traffic is by getting my content on my website and having the right keywords and making them long form and doing all those things right. But I also know that there's a captive audience on sites like Medium and some of the other ones where they're consuming content on a daily basis there. And so if I want to funnel traffic back to my website, some of those tools like that is very helpful. So what you said there is making sure that it's on your website first, taking the imperfect action. And if you see that's like one of your most popular articles on your website, then maybe adding them to Medium or some of the other platforms. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's the best way to definitely do that. And it's so funny, like I started to create this, I have this site called CEO Hacks, and it's kind of a list of all those different things that I kind of talk about. And as I find different hacks or different things, even people mention it on the podcast, I'll add it to the list. It's like, oh, this is something that can help out. So when you were talking about what are the actual tools and stuff, I try to kind of compile that on that site so that everybody can kind of find those and I can always reference those as well.
That's cool. I wonder, does that site get much traffic? Do you promote it? Because that's a pretty good domain name. I bet people would search that term by itself.
Yeah, that's what I'm working on for the next half of the year, funny enough, because that's why I tried to kind of tie a lot of the things that I was doing into that, because I have like kind of set questions that I'll ask throughout the show. And one of the questions I ask is CEO hacks, and I'm a techie. I love, efficiency hacks and things like that. So I'll go crazy for those things. And people on the show say that I'm a geek, and I'll own that and I'll take that because I love kind of figuring out these different things that could kind of make things automated or make things go. So I just started to kind of compile those on the site, and definitely that's what I'm working on for the next half of the year for sure.
Own it, bro. Nerds rule.
There we go.
Yeah, for real. Hey, I got a question to both of you guys. Really, we talked all about the imperfect actions and just doing it. Does that apply to something as big as a book? Like you hear all these people, I'm going to do a book, and then you think about publishing and distribution. I tried to become an artist at one point, and man, once I learned the intricacies of the music business, I no longer wanted to become an artist. So is it the same way with being a book author? The difficulties of getting publishing and distributions. How do you approach that? You just get it and try to just sell it on your own. That's what I'm kind of trying to ask.
Yeah, I haven't written a book, but I would definitely say probably imperfect action is the best way. That's what I think. I think so many times there's still kind of a misconception that when you can become like a multi-millionaire or billionaire by writing a book and those book sales will lead you to that way. And really it's kind of more of an influence tool. So I almost think that even if you start out with like an ebook, and you're starting out and you're getting that feedback, it allows you to kind of iterate towards that actual book. And as you get more and more feedback, it allows you to build that list, build that opportunity, so that when the book does actually go live and you sell it, you have that opportunity to really have a captive audience, for lack of a better term.
Well, I can jump in here because this happens to be an area that, even though I'm not a writer, I've spent literally thousands and thousands of dollars on working towards my book and getting my book done. I'm pretty significantly far through my process, but I've done a lot of research. I have a lot of mentors in this area. And one of the things they say is very similar to what it is. It's imperfect action every day. And even my brother, who's not an author or even a coach or anything like that, had a conversation with me about 5 years ago. And he's like, hey, yeah, I know you want to get a book done. He goes, just think about it. Could you write one page every single day? And I'm like, I could write a page. He goes, think about that. If you just wrote a page every day for 6 months, you'd have a book. And I thought about it, and it's, again, starting at the end and working backwards, right? If I want a couple 100-page book and I did a page every single day, because sometimes I'm going to write one page, and then sometimes I'm going to have a page where it actually ends up being 2 pages, right? But if I were to dedicate myself and hold myself accountable and have somebody else to hold me accountable, because that's important as well, to writing one page every day, I would have a book done in 6 months. That means that I should realistically be able to write 2 books a year. Well, it's been 5 years since then, and I haven't written a book. So I'm like 100 and something pages. So I think what it comes down to, again, is that consistency. Is when you start dedicating yourself and saying, I'm going to do this every single day, I'm going to build a routine around this. If you really want something, whether it's being a great graphic designer, being a great content writer, being a great web developer, the more consistent you are in your efforts on a daily basis, the higher the chance of success that you have. That's just as simple as it gets from that. And so I think when it comes to being an author, there are a lot of, ins and outs of it, getting it on audiobooks and putting out your content through a blog first and then compiling all those blogs and turning them into, but there's a lot of different ways that you can approach that and go about that. But I think that you just have to be consistent. I think that's the most important piece of it at the end of the day, because, if it doesn't take a lot to be an author. I mean, 180 pages of content, what is that, like 4 or 5 hours worth? I mean, we could literally take all of the episodes that we have on the Project Grow Show here with all the gold nuggets that have been given from all the amazing guests, and we could take all this, transcribe it all, and turn that into a book, and probably 2 books, because we've just covered so much content. So I think it's just important to get perspective on, if you want to be an author, writing a book, like you said, isn't about making $1 million or becoming a New York Times. The chances of that happening is like hitting the lottery practically these days. What it is he said, it's an authority building tool. And almost to this point now, because there's so many out there, it's kind of like your business card. It's like the business owner's business card now. If you have a book, it establishes credibility. You're an expert in your field, and you did something that most people aren't consistent enough to do. So I think there's a lot of power in the book. And the sooner that you can do that, there's a book behind me, if you can see on the shelf behind me, by a guy named, the same name as me, Adrian Morrison. And if you look up Adrian Morrison, you'll probably start to be like, holy moly. I read his book back in like 2012. I actually got it from the Goodwill. It was on the shelf at the Goodwill freaking donation place, thrift store. And I picked up this book and it said Adrian on it. I'm like, oh, that's funny. It's my name. And it's like social media secrets or something along those lines. It's like, I can't see where it's at. It's right there somewhere behind me. It's like social media. And then he wrote another one. I remember seeing that like 5 or 6 years ago. I was like, wow, this guy's super young. He wrote a book, and it wasn't a huge book, maybe 160, 170 pages, maybe not even that. And then I looked him up on Facebook, I think about 1.5 years ago, and the guy has used that book to get himself onto TV shows, into interviews, and on CNBC. And I mean, just the fact that he took the time to write it. And when I found out how old he was and where he was from, he's from the same area that I'm from, Northern California, and he's the exact same age as me. Like, we're like a month apart. But he beat me to the punch on writing the book. Our backgrounds are very, very similar, but he did it first. And because of that, he's on stage at the ClickFunnels events. He's on a huge, like the place where he's at in his life in terms of his career, where he wants to be is, or where I want to be is where he's at right now. And so it's just funny to see what a book can really do for your career and for your business. It's a great authority building tool and a great traffic generator. So if you want to write a book, man, I'm telling you, as a mentor and what this show is really about, just start writing 1 page a day, every single day. Don't make excuses. If that's going to be the first thing you do when you wake up in the morning. You just spend an hour a day and you write that 1 page. Watch what happens in 6 months. You'll have enough content, especially if you're an expert in your field. You'll have enough content for at least one book.
Wow.
Super important. And so that's the other part of this is that leads me to is the mentorship, right? I'm a mentor. Chris is a mentor. I'm sure you're a mentor as well, Gresham. What would you, and this is something I was going to ask you with the CEO Blog Nation, and what you have going on with that. Like, what advice would you give to somebody that's, 18 years old, 19 years old, like us, 10, 15 years ago? What advice would you give to somebody, that's very early in their career that wants to be a digital marketing agency owner, that wants to be a content writer? What are some tips that you would give them along their journey to maybe avoid some pitfalls or some things that they can do to kind of move things along and move things down the road faster?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, outside of listening to this show, I mean, I think that you guys are doing, phenomenal content and just understanding your mission and what you're trying to do. I think that's probably the absolute biggest thing that I kind of focused on, and not even knowing that I focused on. I was just always interested in it, and that's what kind of led me to it. But creating that environment by which you can be successful is huge. And that is, sometimes you can have the people around you, but sometimes those are the people that might break you down. So you kind of have to be aware of that. But I'm a big believer in terms of flooding yourself with the good versus trying to remove the bad. So I think if you're so busy taking in really positive content, whether that be videos, podcasts, reading books, whatever that might be, whatever your thing is, I think that creates that environment that can help you to kind of increase the likelihood of being successful. And I think, again, kind of understanding, I usually say there's like two people sometimes that you'll come across, like when you're thinking of doing something audacious or bold. And those people, a lot of times, sometimes either don't want to see you fail, which they love you, they care for you, and they don't want to see you fail. It might be your family, it might be those close to you, your friends, wife, girlfriend, boyfriend, whoever that might be, that doesn't want to see you fail. So they're trying to shelter you from that. And then there's some people that don't want to see you succeed. And that's just being honest about who that person is. But understand that sometimes a lot of the things that you hear from people, a lot of the times the fear and insecurities they put on you is not necessarily a reflection of you. It's sometimes a reflection of them and a reflection of the dreams that they didn't go for, the dreams they didn't go after. So I think really understanding that and those two things is definitely huge. But as we've said, the imperfect action thing is huge. And I think that so many times people read all the books, they take all the classes, they do all the things that they're supposed to do to be successful, and they never, ever take action. So the biggest thing I would say is understand that you have to take action, understand it's going to be messy in the very beginning. It's going to be less than ideal. But continue to kind of take action and continue to kind of learn from that action. Take that breath, look at what you did or what you didn't do, see how it could be better. Understand that I've had ventures that have been terrible and have terrible starts. But it was because of that I think it makes me better and it puts me in a better place than I would have been. So understanding that and continue to kind of really want what you have as a vision and a goal will really kind of allow you to kind of get there.
Well, and I think that's the biggest thing is a lot of people, especially young people, they're just trying to find who they are in the world, right? And I know that was my situation as a lot of people. So they're trying to find what their place is in the world. And when you have a vision, like you're talking about, you said it a few times, when you have a clear vision, that gives you the end point, right? That's you're starting at the end and being able to work backwards. When I say I want to help at-risk youth and restore broken families, that is a goal. That's a big goal, to be able to restore broken families. And I can even put a number. I want to mentor 1 million at-risk youth, whether that's through the podcast, through one-on-one trainings, through courses, through speaking on stage, whatever that is, through my book. I want to mentor 1 million at-risk youth. That's the impact that I'm trying to make in the world. And who knows, that number might go up in the future, but having that clear vision. But where this is all leading to in this conversation is that vision specifically didn't come from me. And so I think there's visions that we're going to have for ourselves that you can set from yourself. And then there's the core foundation of who I am as a person, who I know you are as a person, who I know Chris is as a person, is there are visions that are put in us and callings and purposes on our lives that we have that we may not have even realized yet, but we have to do a lot of work to get there first. And I think a lot of people don't realize that are young is you're going to have to put in the work first. And then that vision of what your purpose and your calling in life will reveal itself. You're not just going to wake up one day and it's going to be like, oh, I mean, it might happen, but the chances of that happening is very slim. You got to go out there, take action every single day and be dedicated and be consistent, right? And be a student. Keep open-minded, be a student, and continue to work on your craft. And then next thing you know, it could be a person, it could be a video you watch, it could be a piece of content that you read, it could be an interview that you're having. All of a sudden it clicks and you go, this is my calling in life. This is my purpose. This is why I was put here on this earth. Especially if you have a belief system, whether you have, if you have faith. So that's what I wanted to turn this over to you as we're wrapping this thing up is tell me about your vision and some of the things that have maybe how you work as a CEO and how your faith has, your faith and your belief systems have a lot to do with that.
Yeah, it's so funny, Adrian, what you were saying just hit home with me because when I was trying to start my business, I got a lot of flack around doing that, around kind of understanding what steps I should take. And I'd, read it before, I'd heard it a couple of times, but I really I still go back to it to this day is the parable of the talents. And the reason I go back to the parable of the talents, because it speaks to these gifts that we're given. I believe they're God-given gifts. There are callings that we have that are put on your heart. And a lot of times you may only have that vision or understand exactly what that is or what that looks like. And it may not be appreciated. It may not be understood by those sometimes closest to you. And I go back to that because I think the thing that came from the talents or the parable of the talents was that those people that were maybe afraid to walk into their gifts, walk into their calling, were not rewarded for doing that. They were actually punished for doing that. And I think when you get those callings, when you get those things that are upon you and given to you, then you are charged with making that come to light. And that's one of the things that I just try to do. Like I go back to, what I feel like is my passion, what I feel like my gift and my vision is really to try to create content in so many different ways to kind of help tell stories, help makes people's lives better. And I think that as I, go to different levels, you get nervous, you get scared. Maybe I am not capable of doing that. Maybe I shouldn't do that. It's something that I go back to all the time. If the vision was given to you, if it was coming up for you and it continues to sometimes come up for you, then you're kind of charged with doing that. So my way of doing that is just through media, through creating and sharing stories of entrepreneurs and business owners, but in so many different ways to kind of make the world a better place. Because I know that that's my gift. That's what speaks to my heart. And that's what I'm here for. And I definitely, you get nervous, you get scared. But you gotta kind of do what you're called to do because that's why you're here on this earth. And if you forget that, if you get, I hate to say this, but if you really get selfish and think that I don't want to take that action because I'm afraid to do it, you're using a lot of I'ms and you're using I, me, my, mine, and all those things, when in reality, you need to think bigger than yourself and really do what you were called to do. And one of my absolute favorite books, and I'll just say this too, is a book called Call to Create. And that book speaks a lot to not only things that I feel like I'm passionate about, but actual businesses, organizations, people that live that and live it, not just in their lives, but in their business and everything they create in the world.
Called to Create. It's funny you say you brought up a book because that was one of the things I was going to ask. I said, is there a book that you could recommend to people that you love that stands out to you? And so you just did it without even, so we're definitely on the same wavelength. I appreciate that. Do you know who the author is of that?
I can't remember. I think his last name might be Lewis, but don't quote me on that.
Okay. Called to Create is the name of it though.
Wow.
Yeah, Called to Create.
Awesome. Well, Chris, did you have any thoughts or questions?
Yeah, just what you said really resonated with me. Brought to mind a guy named Leonard Ravenhill. He has this poem called I don't really know what it's called. It basically just keeps saying, God stamp eternity on my eyeball. Right. So, and you talked so much about, seeing things through the right lens. And I just love how you connect everything back to your faith and your upbringing And I just really appreciate the time that you shared with us today. You've taught me several things, and really got my mind thinking on what can I do to improve myself as a person, to analyze things and try to be a little bit more diligent um, about some of the things that I have as goals in my life. So I appreciate you being here with us today.
I appreciate both of you and all the awesome things you're doing to create, and I'm blessed to have the opportunity. So thank you for thinking of me.
Yeah, no, I think it's really, really important. I think these are great examples of how mentorship works. It's just being a friend. Being a mentor doesn't mean the person's above you. It just means you have somebody to come alongside you and be a friend and be a support. And so when we do these interviews, we meet new people, we share our hearts, we share our passions, and we make new friends. Now, you know, when I see you on Facebook or I see you on social media, I'm like, oh man, like it's going to be, we've built that connection, right? And so I think the more of those connections that we can build, that's truly the power behind mentorship, because you've taught us things and you can teach us more things about content writing. I'm going to be watching your stuff now even closer than I was, and studying stuff that you're doing and learning things and picking up gold nuggets. And I'll probably chime in from time to time and ask you a question or two, or, hey, I got this client that wants to do this. We might have some collaboration opportunities, right? And I'm doing the same thing with all my mentors as well. As every mentor that I have, I still collaborate with, I still connect with on a regular basis. And that's the importance of mentorship and why I'm so passionate about it, and why we're moving this show towards that direction. Is it's all about mentorship, sales, marketing, branding, entrepreneurship, whatever that is, whatever the topic is of the day. CEOs, you know, you're the CEO of CEOs. And so I think it's really important to have those connections and build those relationships with people. And I'm just really grateful that you were able to be on this with us today. And I hope that we get to collaborate.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm definitely looking forward to it.
Same here. Very cool. Well, we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. Thank you guys so much for tuning in with us. Gresham, it's an honor to have you here with us. I'm sure we'll do it again. And you guys just keep these things in mind. If you got to go back and jump back to a few of those gold nuggets again, I would encourage you to do so. You know, starting at the end and working backwards, consistency, work ethic, these are all just really important things to success. And if you're a young person and you're watching this, you got to remember that right now, you may not know what your purpose and your mission and your calling is in life, but you got to go out there and just start taking action every single day and utilize as many hours of those days as you have possible for yourself to be able to find out what that is, and just remain open-minded, remain coachable, and just be a student. And if you don't have a mentor, reach out to me, or reach out even to Gresham, or reach out to Chris, reach out to whoever you feel comfortable with reaching out to, and just let us know what you're trying to do, what it is that you want to do. I'm sure any of us would be happy to help you. I know I would. And we have Meek mentors. So what I want to do is, if somebody wanted to reach out to you, Gresham, what's the best way to contact you?
So I have a website. It's iamgresh.com. You can also send me an email at hello@iamgresh.com. And that's iamgresh.com. And I literally have links to everything I'm working on, and definitely would love to mentor or help out anybody that can.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for being with us today. We really appreciate you tuning in and spending your valuable time with us. That's one thing that you can't get more of. You can get more money, you can get more friends, you can get more influence, but you can't get more time. So I appreciate your time. I appreciate you guys very, very much. And we love you, and we look forward to seeing you on the next one. As always, keep looking up.